the American people stand firm in the faith which has inspired this nation from the beginning. We believe that all men have a right to equal justice under law and equal opportunity to share in the common good. We believe that all men have the right to freedom of thought and expression. We believe that all men are created equal because they are created in the image of God. From this faith, we will not be moved.
Hello, and welcome to the Freedom of Thought podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Freedom of Thought is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps. I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to this show. It is a great pleasure to be back aboard with you once again today. Well, I had two choices. Get into politics again and talk about the frustrations of Ilhan Omar being, winning her primary comfortably again, despite the fact that everywhere you saw were Don Samuels signs. Not that I would vote for Don Samuels in the regular election if he won the primary, but it would be nice to get Ilhan Omar out of the way first. Like, first things first, right? Don Samuels signs everywhere, and Ilhan Omar still wins comfortably. I don't know. It is what it is, right? Well, there was that option, and I guess I already got that out there anyway. Or to try to go back into the other version of freedom of thought, the other side of freedom of thought that I enjoy talking about very much. Of course, oftentimes it involves more research, and I'd like to put together some pretty nice conversations getting into this, like where I call it natural sciences, and of course, like biblical history, stuff like that. It's like natural sciences, biblical history. You can only put one topic down for the actual podcast into the system. So I guess I picked that. I mean, even though biblical history is a big part of this podcast, in fact, that might even be a new term if it exists out there. I'll give it a look. But today I'm going to kind of head more into that direction, and in a large way, literally large way, a giant way. Yeah. So we're going to look at Genesis 6, first of all, here. I'm going to kind of read that, and, well, not the whole chapter, but kind of the main gist of the whole Genesis 6 giants. Well, this is the New King James Version. Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. So it's going to be all over the place. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So now everybody here thinks, including my mom, sadly, and other people, believe that this means right here as to when God cut off the ability for man to live that 900 years and such. Not correct. God is trying to say that man will have 120 years left on this earth. See, this is like the days of Jared, so you can do the math there. Then again, see, the days of Jared probably happened before, and then God was like, yeah, this is getting ridiculous. So, because by this point, I suppose, the days of Jared were quite a bit before, but by this point that God said this, the earth was so corrupted, the DNA of man was so corrupted with the Nephilim giant DNA from the fallen angels and the Watchers and all that, there was no choice really. But God was going to give 120 years to see if there would be at least some people that could be able to hang on, rather than just literally like, okay, I'm starting over. Wipe them out. It is what it is, just extermination. It's all over because, clearly, like man's DNA, man's entire construction, man's DNA profile, signature has been completely corrupted and destroyed. Kind of like a computer virus in a way, but by this whole Watcher/Nephilim giant thing that took place. It started with the days of Jared, and this is obviously years later, 120 years before the flood. So that kind of triggered that conversation. Anyhow, yes, later on, man, and up to today, it is pretty much 120 years that man would live. Or that man's lifespan can go as about 120 maximum. You don't really hear about people living to 123 or 150 or anything like that. But that didn't get to be about maybe like Joseph's generation, I would have to say, because he lived to like 110. So like, say, Joseph, I would say, people like that. 110 even, like back then it was like, oh, he didn't have that long a life. Whereas to us, it'd be like, whoa, that's like ancient history. That's like a World War I veteran, practically. So let's continue to the point. Verse 4, there were giants on the earth in those days and also afterward. There were giants on the earth in those days and also afterward. As in, yes, the flood happened, and all those people were wiped out. There's all kinds of rumors as to how giants could have been after the flood. I have some ideas, and I'm going to bring that today. That's kind of like main part of the conversation today in a lot of ways. There was like, oh yeah, I think I get it now. And like other people were talking about it, but then it's like, oh, wait a minute, it really makes sense. It doesn't kind of make sense, it really does. But now I'm going down multiple rabbit holes on myself here. So yes, the earth was so corrupted that God wiped out all these people, these beings with corrupted DNA, corrupted signature, and all that. So like, his creation was corrupted by this whole, Watcher thing that happened, the Mount Hermon event, as we like to call it. So yes, some people believe that the whole Nephilim thing continued because possibly Ham's wife had Nephilim blood. And it's like, well, maybe not. I think that's possible. I think it's very possible. There's also talk about some tablet that was that kind of talked about all these Watchers and such. Like the whole reason that all this happened was like Watchers and man kind of made an agreement. Like the Watchers gave man, kind of like the serpent, the knowledge of good and evil, but the Watchers gave man all these technologies and all this knowledge that otherwise we wouldn't have. That possibly, generations far, far, far in the past with these Watchers when they were, on Earth before Adam, were able to do it. Like build things like the pyramids. Like man can't build the pyramids. But it's very likely that those ancient civilizations didn't, those ancient civilizations had technology far beyond even today. So like this, like a cell phone and all that, like the modern smartphone, technology like that technology far beyond that existed very likely in the very distant past before Adam, obviously before like God recreated the earth when it became form and void. So obviously there's a million rabbit holes we can go down here. Boy, it's like it's hard to even get your train of thought at times. But what obviously, the days of Jared, all of this took place, and these technologies were passed on to man during the course of time. Things like being able to string instruments, obviously again, and I could do like a more deep, in-depth episode about a lot of this, but yeah, being able to make instruments. Another one being able to make weapons. Another one being able to make tools. Another one, being able to make clothing. It just goes on and on and on, like special kinds of clothing and such. I forget. Yeah, makeup. That's what it was. Makeup to make the women look prettier than ever, and this and that. So those were kind of the deals. Like, yeah, you give us the wife, we give you this technology. And then when they had the wife, obviously that created the giants on the land. Some say the giants could have been up to 40 feet tall. Others say probably more like, 10 to 15-ish. Pre-flood, God only knows. It's impossible to say how large these giants could have been. After the flood, very likely these Nephilim were more called Rephaim giants later on, where they were more likely to be the heights of, like Goliath, 9 foot, anywhere from like 8 to 16 feet, possibly, Og and all that. So these are all rabbit holes we can get into future episodes. So I better just kind of keep it general here for now, just kind of to get the general concept and the general idea of things. These could be future episodes, and that's kind of the idea. I mean, we're not going to be done talking about the giants here in one episode. That's not going to happen. It'll be future episodes, maybe not all like in a series or anything, because I'm going to want to talk about it and obviously have guests on to hear what they have to say about, whoa, they found this or they saw this, because they're still around. Yeah, they're still around, but not nearly as many. Now everybody says, okay, they were all wiped out, right? All the giants were wiped out. And you think, okay, fine. Obviously, there were giants in Canaan, right? There were giants in Canaan with Joshua and Caleb and all that, the Battle of Jericho and all that. There were giants there, tall as a cedarwood tree, which could be up to 30 or 40 feet tall, which is insane. But I guess if they're as tall as cedarwood trees, I suppose so. But the conversation there is, okay, fine. Well, but okay, they got wiped out in that battle. Did they, though? Hard to say. But hard to say. There's a pretty good possibility that some did escape. So that's where that conversation comes. And obviously there is physical evidence all over the planet that, of course, some of those giants got away. And that doesn't mean they were all in Canaan. That's the other side of it. They may never have been in Canaan. There may have been several giants that never were in Canaan at all, that they already had traveled elsewhere. Now, where did this second group of giants come from? That's obviously kind of in a lot of ways the gist of today's episode. Again, you figure, okay, so the Nephilim, whatever, were wiped out during the flood because God was like, okay, we got to start over, right? We have to start over, but hey, at least there's Noah's family. So yes, we have an opportunity to continue the bloodline. Ultimately, that would lead to Abraham, at least from Shem's side, and then all of the rest of us, from Shem, Ham, and parts of, it's Shem and Japheth, but also, or Shem, Ham, and Japheth, you get the idea. Other parts of us, obviously, Asians, Europeans, Latino, whatever the heck, obviously, black, obviously, coming from Ham, most likely, Egypt, all that stuff. But, so yes, the earth was replenished over the course of time, thanks to that. But, okay, so, but if God wanted them all wiped out, why are they back? How did they come back? Nimrod. At least that's, Nimrod. The more and more you think about it, Nimrod. And either way, from Ham and Canaan and all that, as the curse was put on Canaan, the whole, and we've talked about this on a previous episode, the whole Noah's nakedness. This was like 2 episodes ago, I believe. Yep, the 20 patriarchs. So kind of going back to that for a millisecond here. Noah's nakedness. Ham just kind of was like, oh, wow, look at this, what the heck, blah, 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 when Noah had gotten drunk or whatever. And then Noah put a curse on Canaan, not on Ham. And then Canaan's bloodline went into Nimrod not that long after that. Nimrod was merely Noah's great-grandson, not even that far away. And a great-grandson of Noah isn't that far down the generational path, because Noah outlived Peleg, who was several generations later. Isn't that insane? Isn't that crazy? Remember we talked about that a couple episodes ago, the 20 Patriarchs episode. So absolutely nuts when you consider that. Nimrod, the Tower of Babel, which I believe, this is my opinion, my belief, and my belief was that the Tower of Babel in a lot of ways was another Mount Hermon. Yes, another Mount Herman. That's my belief, and it has been brought up. The idea has been brought up, and then it's like, of course, it makes sense. It's like Nimrod literally being able to reach heaven on the Tower of Babel. Well, I mean, all of this has been very, very, one way or another, it's been very debated as to like how tall the Tower of Babel was. Was it potentially a portal, a spiritual portal? Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. Yes, I think it was a spiritual portal because Mount Herman basically was and may very well still be today as to a lot of the creepy stuff going on in this world today. And the fact that every single time a giant's, like a giant skeleton is found, the Smithsonian comes and it's gone. Why is that? The giant of Kandahar in Afghanistan, the story going way back to, was it 01, 02, around there, but over 20 years ago already, where there was a giant in the cave and all that. He killed one of the soldiers with a spear, and then they blew his head off because they all had to they all fired the guns at the giant. But he was incredibly fast, incredibly skilled. That's the other thing. So he wasn't just some dumb oaf who could barely walk, whatever, or some, unfortunately, dare I say, massive birth defect. Like a lot of the quote-unquote giants you see in documentaries and stuff, it's all just people with birth defects. They grew like 7'5", 7'8", and they can hardly walk, and they died when they're 30. No. These are superhuman beings that are evil. They don't have a soul, literally, or if they do, it's not a good one. Demonic souls, basically, because the way they came about was, completely against God. It was completely against God. So that's why. So, and that giant's body disappeared also, because I think today what's going on, and it's not just me thinking this, many other people all over. I won't name names because I don't want to speak for them necessarily. They might be like, hey, I didn't say this, I didn't say that. But then again, they probably, it's kind of like a strong belief that this is what's going on all over the place. Let's just think of any of the big name guests that you'll hear on the Blurry Creatures, shows like that, confessionals or something, like the big name guests that they have. Blurry Creatures tends to get the big name guests. Confessionals, I think he tries to go for more like the common folk with stories to pass on, which also could be very much related to this. But they're trying to do it again, and it's happening again. Oh yeah, it's happening again. Oh yeah, and it's about 100 rabbit holes you can go down with all of that, but we're going to stick to the giants rather than say gray alien this and all that. So as to what those are, I kind of gave you a hint about that in a previous episode, but we'll get deeper into that in future episodes as well, because that's a topic that ain't going away, folks, and neither is the topic of the giants. They absolutely were in the United States. There's no doubt about that. And again, every single time that their bodies have been found, anything 8 foot, 12 foot, 18 foot, 15 foot, 11 foot, you could just go on all day. 10 foot is a common one. They get, the Smithsonian comes and it's gone forever. And it's like, what the heck? Whereas in the deep past, some of this stuff was on display and all of that. Rumors as to one of the several reasons we invaded Iraq, we being the United States invaded Iraq, they took the remains supposedly of Gilgamesh. And belief is that Gilgamesh was Nimrod. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Nimrod. Why would they want Nimrod's remains? Could it be? Nudge, nudge. Nudge, nudge, nudge. So, yes. It's just absolutely fascinating. And again, giant sightings in places like the Solomon Islands. We could do an episode on that someday. Obviously, the Solomon Islands. Obviously, some group of islands way west, kind of like west of Hawaii. I do believe that's kind of close to the international date line. It's one of the earliest, you could say it's one of the latest, actually, parts. It's like say if it's 3 a.m. on Saturday morning here, it's probably still Friday night there. That's how far back in the international timeline it goes, whereas Australia would already be like, Sunday, if you know what I mean. So it's pretty crazy how like there's that international date line. But yes, the Solomon Islands, a area that wasn't really frequented much over the years. There's a strong belief that there's a ton of giants there that have been, in the caves there. Obviously in North America, places like Lovelock Cave, sightings in even places like Indiana. I mean, my goodness, like currently, I mean, that's just crazy. So absolutely fascinating conversation. But again, my number one belief is that this all kind of started with this all kind of started to come back with Nimrod. And why God wouldn't just have another flood again? Well, first of all, he promised there wouldn't be another flood. Secondly, there are plenty of human beings that are still of pure DNA on this earth. It's not like back then where it was literally like there was almost nothing left. There was single-digit human beings left on this planet that could be called a regular human being, rather than half this, half that, half Nephilim, 1/4 Nephilim, whatever. 3/4 Nephilim. Pardon me. There was definitely a lot. It was pretty much everybody had their DNA messed up, and they're basically the demons of today, the disembodied spirits that are out there, kind of like in between everything. The familiar spirits you might see and such. Yeah, that kind of stuff. I think there's a pretty good possible relation to all that as well. Oh boy, but that's another rabbit hole for another episode. See, that's what's great about freedom of thought. There's material everywhere. It's endless. But sometimes you got to gather it up and actually put together a better show. I wish I could be in studio right now. But again, this is kind of, in a lot of ways, more of an appetizer episode when it comes to the giants out there. The giants that are out there on this planet still today. The giants that they're not nearly as frequent as they were way back in the past, obviously. A lot of them have died off and such, but then there's a strong possibility that they're kind of being started up again, by the powers that be on this planet. Even at a place like Mount Hermon itself, like still something, maybe, at least connections with these spirits, and where all this, technology, the technology advancement that's been moving so much faster the last century or so, where'd that come from? Where'd it come from? Obviously there's brilliant minds out there. God gave us all a brain that's very strong and capable. But certain inventions, certain creations out there, you really wonder. You really wonder, though. Could it be similar like the days of Noah? Like it even says in the Bible that the end times will be like the days of Noah. And, well, we're getting pretty close to that, aren't we? We're getting pretty close to it being the days of Noah. If a lot of these beings are starting to make a comeback. Reported sightings in so many different places. Afghanistan seems to be one of the very prominent places where giants have been seen via the infrared camera in the nighttime. A fascinating episode not too long ago on blurry creatures. Well, it was like over a year ago, but still, because I'm actually getting caught up on the show. I'm listening to every episode slowly but surely to eventually get caught up. So, but yeah, that's fascinating stuff there. Man, I'd love to have one of those guys as a guest, like one of the blurry creatures host as a guest, and of course some of the similar guests as well that they have on, starting with the guy that started with Giants of America. Great Instagram out there. Highly recommend that one. So shout out there, you could say, basically. Yes, it is. Again, it's the days of Noah. It really is kind of gradually heading towards that. We're definitely not there at this second, but we're so close that obviously things can change very quickly at any time. We don't know how far along everything is right now behind the scenes in all these, these creepy stories of like these massive bases underground that could go on forever. It's amazing stuff. So obviously people have talked about that. Several different people in the military have talked about those. It's an endless rabbit hole you could go down. But again, this is more of an appetizer to things today to talk about what's what's out there, what was out there, how did it come back. Again, my belief is definitely related to Nimrod, and man, it's interesting. These weird cars everywhere right now, but yeah, definitely related to Nimrod. In a lot of ways, I think that's where a lot of this kind of got started again, and that tablet actually found its way into his possession. A tablet that supposedly talked about all this, that like ways to reach these watchers, or these watcher type angels that could do this type of thing, and be a huge problem going forward to help corrupt, unfortunately, the human population. But not only that, but to build an army for Satan himself. And that's a lot of what's been going on. That's a lot of ways been the mission. The original mission was to corrupt the human race, to prevent Jesus to ever happen on this earth, because to prevent Jesus to be able to come down to this earth in human form. That was the original plan. Plan B with Lucifer is to create a powerful, Lucifer, that'd be Satan himself, of course, a powerful army out of these giants and such as well. So whoo-wee. Well, are you appetized yet? That's kind of been the idea, I guess, with this episode. Again, we're going to go deeper and deeper into this into future episodes. Will the next episode be political again? Again, apologize. I mean, let me know how you guys feel with the direction of this show. Obviously, there's going to be some political conversation, but would like to get deeper and deeper and deeper into this kind of thing. And obviously, like your several episodes ago, or a few episodes again, like what's your role? A planter, a harvester, a waterer, so on and so forth. I mean, it's fun to do episodes like that. It truly is. Obviously, episodes like the Giants here, this is, it's a fascinating thing. You could go on forever. You could do 100 episodes on it easily, with all the different conversations out there. Aliens and UFOs and blah, 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 and this and that. Holy cow, you could go on all day. I mean, you could go on all year. Not all day, you could go on all year. Episode after episode after episode after episode when it comes to conversation like that. So that's pretty much the idea of where we're heading in a lot of ways. But of course, again, political conversation is always going to be part of the show. That's the original of the show, the roots. That's where we started, keeping up the fight and all that when it came to what a lot of us believe, that the election was stolen in 2020. So conversations like that and what's going to happen going forward. And also to look at the news and all that, like political, which is news, from a Christian worldview. As some other podcasts would say out there, like the Strong Report, obviously the Final Hour podcast, that's pretty close to home here, of course. Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Jim Hammond, Linnea Farrell, John Gapp, from my very church, Living Word Christian Center. So obviously, again, highly recommend that. Where again, it's like news for the Christian worldview. So yeah, that's kind of part of this show. Obviously, we could talk about science, astronomy a bit, but again, from a Christian view, not from like, it's all just there, it all happened, it all just happened on its own. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. It did not. There's no way it did. So I think you get the idea. You get the gist. I don't want to babble on too much. Thank you. Please tell your friends about this episode if you could. I hope it's been a decent, appetizer for you out there. Again, planting seeds, which is what I tend to do here on Freedom of Thought. Planting seeds. That is my role. And that's what I'm doing right now, planting seeds. Now we're going to actually water those seeds a little bit and plant some more seeds. So I will water a little bit on future episodes, talking about the giants and such, adding deeper research into what's been going on out there. Deeper and deeper research, hopefully guests and such. But again, planting new seeds as well to not only help this show grow, but to help, again, just to, get this knowledge out there, because it's fascinating. The history of this world is far more fascinating than most of us have been brought up to believe over the course of the years. So it's amazing, absolutely amazing. It opens a lot of doors, truly does. With that said, I want all of you to take care. Keep sharing this episode, keep sharing this show. Those of you that have, thank you so much. anybody else out there, please do. Please help this show. If you want to help, there's obviously, you could do one-time donations. You could do recurring donations as low as 99 cents if you want to. Even just a single donation of 99 cents. If you could help this show, it'd be great. Be great. With that said, take care. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.